Okay, greetings everyone. So today's topic is about polynomials. So in the polynomials, we'll go through the first topic, that is zeros of the polynomials. So zeros of the polynomials. So in your earlier classes, you would have read about polynomials. So generally polynomials are of different degrees. Okay, so let me write a couple of them here. So P of X, if P of X is in the form AX plus B, or the P of X can be of the form AX square plus BX plus C. Or we can also write P of X as AX cube plus BX square plus CX plus D. So if you look at this, I have wrote three polynomials. AX plus B, that is the polynomial of degree 1, or this can also be called as linear polynomial. Okay, so when the x powers, right, here the x power is 1 and here the x power is 2. So whenever you have a polynomial with the degree that x power 2, that 2 is called the degree of the polynomial. The highest power of x in that polynomial is the degree of the polynomial. So in this case, in the linear polynomial, it is 1. So x plus b is a linear polynomial, and x square plus bx plus c, here the highest power is 2. So this we can call it as quadratic polynomial. Okay, so this is called as quadratic polynomial. And similarly, here we have the highest power as 3 for x. So this is called cubic polynomial. Okay, you would have learned in your earlier classes what is a quadratic polynomial, but here in this session we will learn about what is a quadratic polynomial too. Okay, so for example, let's say P of X equal to 2x plus 3, right? So this is what polynomial this is? This is a linear polynomial. If I equate this to 0, then what is the value of x? So 2x plus 3 is 0, and x becomes 2x becomes this plus 3 goes to the other side of the equality, then it is minus 3, and then x becomes minus 3 by 2. So for this value of x, this polynomial becomes 0. If you substitute the x value as minus 3 by 2, then this value becomes 0. So that particular value for which the polynomial becomes 0, that is called the 0 of a polynomial. In quadratic equation, we call a root of the quadratic equation. So here we call it as a 0 of the polynomial. So what is the 0 of the polynomial here? For P of X, for P of X, minus 3 by 2 is the 0 of the polynomial. Okay. So as this is a linear polynomial, we'll have only 1 0. Okay. Maximum, the most zeros of a linear polynomial is 1. Okay. And similarly, let's look at any quadratic polynomial. Quadratic polynomial means we need to have a square, right? So let's consider any polynomial. For example, I just have something like P of X. Let's take this. Okay, x square minus 3x minus 4. Okay, let's say this is our quadratic polynomial. So in this quadratic polynomial, how to find the zeros of it? So that means we need to equate this to 0. So let's say P of X is 0, right? So what is P of X? X square minus 3x minus 4 is 0. Now let's see how to solve this, right? So minus 4. So if I can rearrange this as x square minus 4x plus x minus 4 equal to 0. So what I have done is, in place of minus 3x, I have expanded that into minus 4x plus x. So that way I can take the common x as common here. Let's see. So if I take from the first two terms, if I take x common, this becomes x minus 4. And then here in the last two terms, if I just take 1 as common, then it is x minus 4. So I am trying to find the roots or the factors for this polynomial. So now, can I write this as x minus 4? I am taking x minus 4 common, and then I am also writing the remaining value as x plus 1. So here, the quadratic polynomial x square minus 3x minus 4, I have split into two factors, x minus 4 into x plus 1. If I multiply that, I'll get that x square minus 3x minus 4. Now, so x minus 4 and x plus 1 is 0, right? So I can equate either x minus 4 as 0 or x plus 1 as 0, right? So both values are possible. So x can be 4 here or x can be minus 1 here. So these two values for p of x is 4 and x is minus 1, are the zeros of that quadratic polynomial. You got it, right? So for the linear polynomial, when we equate to 0, we got 1, 1, 0. So here for the quadratic polynomial, when I equate it to 0, I am getting two values here, two zeros. So 4 and minus 1. So for this polynomial p of x, right? For this polynomial p of x, the zeros are, as it is a quadratic polynomial, there will be two zeros. So the zeros are 4 and minus 1. Now, for example, let's consider, let's say this is, let's say some generic values, right? For example, let's say alpha and beta, some constants, right? Alpha and beta are the roots of polynomial, right? Are the roots of polynomial. Then let's see what relation we will get between the zeros of the polynomial. So first, let's see here. Here, what I am trying to do is the p of, sorry, yeah, x is 4 and x is minus 1, right? In this case, x is 4 and minus 1. If I take x minus 4 is one factor, and then x minus of minus 1, the other root. So x plus 1 it will become, that equal to 0. Now, if I, no, not equal, not 0, just multiply those, right? X minus 4 into x plus 1. X minus 4 into x plus 1. So x into x is x square, and x into plus 1 is plus x, and minus 4 into x is minus 4x, and minus 4 into plus 1 is minus 4. So if I solve this, x square minus 3x minus 4. This is the polynomial we started when we equated to 0 to find the values of zeros of the polynomial. So when you know the zeros of the polynomial, if you do like x minus the first 0 into x minus the second 0, you will get the polynomial. So there are two ways we can do here. One, in the board exam, they can ask, they gave the quadratic polynomial, ask you to find the zeros of the polynomial. That's one scenario. The other scenario is they give the zeros of the polynomial and they may ask you to find the quadratic polynomial. Okay, so that's about it. And this alpha and beta, that we will take a look little later. But now let's focus on this, the zeros of the polynomial, right? Let's finish this topic. So in this, let's say the first polynomial, the linear polynomial that we took, 2x plus 3, right? So let's take that and depict that into a graph. Okay, so the first linear polynomial was 2x plus 3. So if this 2x plus 3, if you depict that into a graph, right? So I can say like this is an equation, right? This is a line. So y equal to 2x plus 3, I can write it, right? So if I want to depict that into a graph, so let's say this is a rough graph, okay? And let's say this is a 0, the origin. And here, if I substitute this to x, if I make x as 0, if I make x as 0, the y value here becomes 2 into 0 is 0 plus 3. That means the y value I'll get as 3. So that is one coordinate to draw the line. And now I'll make y as 0. When I make y as 0 for this, then 2x plus 3 is 0, then x becomes minus 3 by 2. So x is minus 3 by 2. Hope you're following here, right? So now, if I want to draw the graph, let's just put the values 1, 2, and 3. And here also 1, 2, and 3. And here, put the minus values, right? This is minus x-axis. So -2 and -3. Now what values we get? So here the coordinate is 0, 3. So 0 is the x coordinate and 3 is the y coordinate. So this is 1 point. And now 0 and -3, 2. 0, sorry, -3 by 2, 0. So x is -3 by 2. So it will be 1.5, -1.5. So somewhere here. So this is your linear polynomial. Okay. So this linear polynomial, where it is touching the x-axis, this is touching the x-axis at 1 point. So this has 1, 0. So what I'm trying to say is, if you look at a graph or if you draw a graph using that polynomial, it can be a linear polynomial or quadratic or cubic polynomial. The points at which it touches the x-axis, that will be your 0 of the polynomial. Here, it is touching the x-axis at -3 by 2, 0. That means the x coordinate is -3 by 2. That will be your polynomial. That will be your 0 of the polynomial. So let's say I draw a quadratic polynomial that can come in the form of a the parabola. So that parabola touches the x-axis. Let's say if it is touching at 2 points, then you have two zeros of the polynomial. So there are two ways. One is you can find the zeros of the polynomial by equating the polynomial to 0. That's one method. The other method is you draw the graph and see where it is touching the x-axis. For example, let's take any a quadratic polynomial, which is in the form ax square plus bx plus c. Now, if I draw the graph, right, takes various values of x and y, then you can draw the graph. So this will come something like a parabola. Okay. So this is 0. And here is, so how many points it is touching? This is a quadratic polynomial. And how many points that it is touching the x-axis? There are 2 points. This is the first point, right? This is, let's say, x1 here. And this is x2. So it is touching at 2 points. These 2 points, x1 and x2, are the zeros of the polynomial. So the hint here is the number of points at which a polynomial touches the x-axis are the zeros of the polynomial. So here in this graph, the parabola is touching x-axis at 2 points. So those two are the zeros of the polynomial. And for example, I have a cubic polynomial, right? So which will be in the form of ax cube plus bx, bx square plus cx plus d. If I draw the graph of this, it can come something like this, let's say. Let's draw the graph here, right? Now, if you look at this, this is touching, let's say it comes like this. I'm just drawing a rough sketch, okay? So if you look at this, so how many points that this is touching here? So 1, 2, and 3. So this polynomial is touching the x-axis at 3 points. Let's say that is x1, x2, and x3. So these 3 are the zeros of the polynomial. So there may be multiple choice questions or something, right? So in the board exams, so where they just give like this, right? They just give the polynomial as this graph, and they will say like, how many zeros of the polynomial? How many zeros that this polynomial has? So here, if you, what is our thumb rule? The zeros of the polynomial are equal to the number of points at which the polynomial cuts or touches the x-axis. So here, if you see, this polynomial is not touching the x-axis at all. So that means the answer should be no zeros. So these polynomial do not have any zeros because it is not cutting the x-axis or not touching the x-axis. Similarly, for example, if you have like this, if this is the polynomial they have given, so then how many zeros this polynomial has? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this polynomial has 5 zeros. Hope you're following, right? So basically what we have learned here is what is a linear polynomial, what is a quadratic polynomial, and what is a cubic polynomial. here, another important point you need to remember here. When we say the form of these polynomials, right? So here, ax plus b, right? So here, a and b, these are the coefficients, we call it as coefficients. So here, a and b should be real numbers, should be real numbers. And here, x square plus bx plus c, here, a should not be 0. A should not be 0. What happens if a is 0? 0 into x square is 0. That means it becomes a linear polynomial. It is no more quadratic polynomial. So the coefficient of x square should not be 0, and the remaining values, the a, b, c, I mean all the coefficient should be a real number. And similarly here for the quadratic polynomial, a should not be 0. If a is 0, it becomes a quadratic polynomial because 0 into x cube becomes 0, right? So then these coefficients a, b, c, and d should be real numbers, belongs to real numbers. Okay, so that's one hint you need to remember. So we looked at the different polynomials and what is the zero of a polynomial. Zero of a polynomial is such value, if you substitute that value into that polynomial, the polynomial value becomes a 0. That's the zero of the polynomial, right? For example, if k is a value, where if you substitute p of k, means in place of x, if you substitute k, when p of k becomes 0, then k is your 0 of the polynomial. Understood? 0. Here in this 2x plus 3 equal to the 2x plus 3 polynomial, the value of x is, the 0 is minus 3 by 2, because if you substitute that value, the polynomial value is becoming 0. So such value is called 0 of a polynomial. So how many zeros you can have for a polynomial? If it is a linear polynomial, 1. If it is a quadratic polynomial, 2, because the degree of the polynomial is 2 and the maximum zeros we can get is 2. And if it is a cubic polynomial, 3, maximum 3. The degree of polynomial is 3 and we can get a maximum of 3 zeros for that polynomial. And we also looked at like how to get those zeros. There are two methods. One is a graphical method. One is equating to 0. If you equate to 0 and solve that equation, you will get 1 root if it is a linear polynomial, 2 roots if it is a quadratic, and 3 roots if it is a cubic polynomial. If you draw the graph, the number of points at which the polynomial touches the x-axis is your 0 of the polynomial. For we draw this for 2x plus 3, it is touching at 1. It touching at 1 point, so 1, 0 of the polynomial. If it is quadratic polynomial, it is touching at 2 points, so it is quadratic polynomial which touches at 2. So that means 2 zeros of that polynomial. And then we looked at various like different polynomials, graphs, the number of points it touches. So that will be the zeros of the polynomial. In case if it is not touching, then it is no zeros for that polynomial. So that's how we concluded the topic of zeros of the polynomial.